You know my mom needs this money for her treatment. She is really all I got, Teresa said, her voice barely above a whisper, her eyes searching Raphael's face for something, anything, that looked like understanding. Raphael reached across the table and took her hands in his. His grip was warm, confident, the kind of grip that had always made her feel safe. My love, I know. But I need to travel to the city and make money for us so that we can have a better future. She stared at him for a long moment. The kerosene lamp between them flickered, throwing soft shadows across his face. He looked so sure of himself. So certain that the city would be kind to him, that the future he was promising her was already waiting somewhere out there, fully formed, just needing him to show up and claim it. And because she loved him, because she had loved him for 3 years with the kind of love that doesn't ask too many questions, she believed him. That was the night Teresa made the worst decision of her life. And she didn't even know it yet. She had grown up watching her mother do everything alone. Her father had died when Teresa was only 7, leaving behind a small mud house, a wrapper full of memories, and a woman who refused to be broken. Mama Teresa had sold firewood, farmed other people's land, and plaited hair under a mango tree just to keep her daughter in school. She had calloused hands and a warm laugh and a way of humming old songs while she cooked that made the whole house feel like a safe place. She was not just Teresa's mother. She was her home. So when Mama collapsed one dry harmattan morning while carrying a basin of water from the well, and the neighbors rushed her to the general hospital, and the doctor pulled Teresa aside with a face that carried no good news, Teresa's whole world tilted sideways. We need 200,000 naira before we can begin treatment, the doctor said, adjusting his glasses. Her condition is serious. Time is not on our side. Teresa stood in that narrow hospital corridor and felt the floor shift beneath her feet. 200,000 naira. She had exactly that amount, every kobo of it, saved inside a biscuit tin she kept under her bed. 3 years of waking up before dawn to set up her roadside pepper and tomato stall. 3 years of sitting under the sun, breathing in dust from passing okadas, counting coins at the end of every day. She had saved that money with no specific plan, only a quiet sense that one day it would matter. She just never imagined it would matter like this. She went home that evening with every intention of taking that money straight back to the hospital in the morning. She would pay the doctors. She would sit beside her mother's bed. She would hold those calloused hands until they were warm again. That was the plan. But Raphael came that night. He had been talking about the city for months. Lagos, specifically. That loud, breathing, chaotic city that swallowed young men whole and sometimes, just sometimes, spat them back out as success stories. He had a contact there, a distant cousin who had promised to help him find work. He just needed transport, something to settle in with, and a little extra to hold him until his first pay. He had done the math. He needed 200,000 naira. I have been thinking, he said, sitting across from her with that look in his eyes, the one she had never been able to resist. If I go now, within 1 year, things will change for us. I will send money back. We will build something real, you and I. Teresa looked at him and felt the war begin inside her chest. She told him about her mother. She told him about the hospital, the doctor, the corridor, the words that had knocked the breath out of her. He listened. He nodded. He said he was sorry. And then, gently, carefully, he said, "But your mother has been sick before and she recovered. The doctors in these government hospitals always exaggerate. She will be fine, my love. And when I get to Lagos, the first money I make, I will send it back for her treatment." He said it so gently. So lovingly. As if it were the most reasonable thing in the world. And Teresa, God help her, believed him. She told herself it was temporary. She told herself her mother was strong, had always been strong. She told herself that Raphael's trip was an investment in all their futures, including Mama's. She went to that biscuit tin, counted out the money with shaking hands, and gave it to the man she loved. Raphael left for Lagos 3 days later. He hugged her at the motor park, kissed her forehead, and told her she was the best thing that had ever happened to him. She stood and watched the bus pull away, and she felt something she could not name, not quite peace, not quite dread. Something in between. She went back to the hospital with empty hands and a story she could barely say out loud. The doctor looked at her with tired, knowing eyes. He had seen this before. He said they would do what they could. They always said that. 2 weeks later, Mama Teresa died. She went quietly, in the early hours of a Tuesday morning, in a bed that smelled of antiseptic and sorrow. The nurse said she had asked for Teresa the night before. Had called her name twice and then stopped. Teresa was not there. She had been at her stall, selling tomatoes, trying to raise whatever she could, trying to outrun a decision she had already made. She did not cry at first. She stood beside her mother's body and felt absolutely nothing. A hollow, terrible nothing, like someone had reached inside her chest and scooped out everything that had ever made her feel human. The crying came later, alone, on the floor of the small mud house, surrounded by the smell of her mother's things. It came in waves so violent they frightened her. She cried until her throat was raw and her eyes were dry, and still her body kept shaking, kept looking for more tears that were no longer there. She called Raphael. He picked up, sounding distracted, slightly breathless, like she had caught him in the middle of something important. She told him Mama was gone. There was a pause. He said he was sorry. He said he would call her back. He never did. She told herself he was busy. She told herself Lagos was overwhelming, that he was still finding his feet, that the money would come soon and things would settle. She called again the next day. And the day after. Sometimes he picked up and spoke to her in short sentences that felt borrowed, like he was reciting lines from a play she had not auditioned for. Sometimes he did not pick up at all. Sometimes the phone rang and rang and rang into silence. The weeks became months. The months carried a particular cruelty. They moved slowly enough for her to feel every single day of Raphael's absence, every unanswered call, every night she lay awake in a house that now held only her shadow. Her roadside stall kept her hands busy, but nothing could touch the ache that had taken permanent residence somewhere behind her ribs. People in the village noticed. They always do. Women who had known her mother would stop by the stall and ask with soft voices how she was managing. She always said fine. She had learned to wear fine like a piece of clothing she put on every morning before stepping outside. It was her neighbor, a round cheerful woman named Beezy, who finally said what others had only whispered. "Bet you're Raphael," Beezy said one afternoon, cracking groundnuts with her thumb. "They say he has changed in that Lagos. That city changes people, my daughter. Just be careful." Teresa did not respond. But something about the way Beezy said it, with that particular weight, that careful tone of someone who knows more than they are saying, planted a seed that she could not uproot. She made the decision on a Thursday evening, impulsive and quiet, telling no one. She would go to Lagos. She would surprise him. She would see for herself the life he was building, the one he had promised would include her. She arrived at the address he had once sent her in a text, back when he still sent texts, a compound in a busy part of the city. The journey had taken 8 hours. She was tired and dusty, and her heart was hammering so loudly she was certain the Okada man who dropped her off could hear it. She knocked on the door. A woman opened it. She was pretty in the effortless way of someone who had never had to try too hard. She was wearing Raphael's shirt. Teresa recognized it immediately, a blue and white striped shirt she had helped him pack. She was holding a phone and looking at Teresa with polite confusion. "Can I help you?" the woman asked. Teresa's mouth opened and nothing came out. And then Raphael appeared from somewhere inside the room, saw her, and the color drained from his face. What followed was ugly in the way only real things can be ugly, not dramatic, not cinematic, just raw and human and devastating. Raphael stumbled over explanations that explained nothing. The woman in his shirt stood to the side with her arms crossed, no longer confused, now just bored in the way of someone who had seen this scene before. Teresa did not shout. She had no energy for shouting. She just stood there and looked at him and felt something inside her finally, completely break. "I gave you my mother's life," she said. Her voice was low and steady and more frightening than any scream. "I gave you the money that would have saved her and she died waiting. And this is what you did with it." Raphael said her name. Just her name, nothing else. As if her name were an answer. She turned and walked away. She did not look back. The bus ride home lasted 8 hours, same as the journey there, but it felt like a lifetime. She sat by the window and watched Lagos disappear and thought about her mother. She thought about that night with the kerosene lamp and the warm hands across the table and the words that had sounded so much like love. She thought about the biscuit tin under her bed. She thought about the hospital corridor and the doctor's tired eyes. She thought about a Tuesday morning and a nurse's voice on the phone and a name called twice in the night with no one there to answer. She found it almost impossible to forgive herself. That was the truest thing. Harder than the grief, harder than the betrayal, the knowledge that she had been the one to open the door to all of this. Nobody had forced her hand. She had chosen. And her mother had paid the price for her choice. But somewhere on that long road home, in the quiet dark of the moving bus, with her forehead resting against the cool glass of the window, a thought came to her. Small and fragile, like the first green shoot after a long dry season. Her mother had not raised a woman who stayed broken. She had raised a woman who got up. Who sold tomatoes in the dust. Who saved money in a biscuit tin. Who loved hard and foolishly but loved nonetheless. Her mother's hands had been calloused from building, and she had built Teresa. The least Teresa could do was become something worth all that building. She could not undo the past. She could not bring back the dead or reclaim the money or unspeak the words she had said across a kerosene lamp on a quiet night. But she was still here. Still breathing. Still, in spite of everything, alive. And sometimes, that is where the rest of your life begins. There is a kind of love that blinds us, not because it is evil, but because it is desperate. Teresa had loved Raphael the way people love when they are afraid of being alone, when they mistake a person's confidence for a promise. She had placed him at the center of her life and pushed everything else, even her mother, to the edges. And the edges, as she had learned, were where the most important things lived. The lesson she carried home was not about men or betrayal or city life. It was simpler and more painful than all of that. It was this. Know what you cannot afford to lose before you give it away. Because some things, once gone, do not come back. Some doors, once closed, stay closed. And some Tuesday mornings will find you standing in a hospital corridor wishing you had chosen differently when you still had the chance. Teresa knew that now. She knew it in her bones. She only wished she had known it sooner. Please, my amazing viewers, don't leave without subscribing to our channel for more premium and interesting stories. See you next time. Bye.